We have a newcomer, I think.
Sure. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to 52 Living Ideas. This is a Poetic Monday. And so what we're going to do is everybody is welcome to share their favorite poems, after which we're going to go to breakout rooms and we're going to do collaborative poetry. And Maritza will explain what that is and talk about the topic. After we come back from that, we get to read the two collaborative poems that we put together. And then we talk about poetry and art. That's the plan. So let me hand it over to Maritza.
So welcome everybody to Poetry Mondays. I'm excited to be here with you all today again. Just so you guys know, we do have an electronic kind of a journaling that we do here for our Poetry Monday sessions. This is week 16. So if you can believe it, we're at the end of doing this for 4 months. And what we do is I collect every poem that is read. I find a copy of it, and we do provide a link for you in our hyperbook, which is it's online and it's accessible for all of you. We do welcome everyone and anyone to read a personal poem if they wish. You're invited and welcome to do so. If you do so, I'll reach out to you privately and see if you're willing to post that, your personal poem. And what we'll do is we do provide a link to your poem in PDF format so that it can be viewed but not altered. We do a featured poem. So my apologies for not getting you this featured poem in advance like usual, but I'm gonna go ahead and I will throw it up on the screen for you today. Today's poem is by Francisco Aragon, and it's originally in Spanish. It does have an English translation. What I'm going to do for you is I will read it both in English and in Spanish. And just so you can hear, because in Spanish, it has a rhyming scheme that doesn't quite come through when it's translated to English. So I would like for you guys to hear that. Even if you don't know the language, you'll get the poetic rhythm of it. After I'm done reading the featured poem, we open it up to all of you to read your favorite poems or your own works of art. And then, I almost forgot to give you the topic for today. Today, we're going to, we give you a centralizing theme for when you go into the breakout rooms to create your collaborative poem. This week, we're going to talk about being and becoming. So we're gonna go into that topic. We'll ask you to explore that as you write your poetic lines. Right before breakout room, I'll explain to you the hows of how it goes in the breakout rooms itself. So for now, let me go ahead and share this screen with you. And I will get started with our featured poem for today. City Moon by Francisco Aragon. Perfect disk of moon, huge and shimmering. Low on the capital's filthy horizon. Ay, que luna más hermosa, she says, pushing the stroller slowly down Atocha. And gorgeous, too, the firm-thighed boys from Lisbon, a block away, who work kilometer zeros sidewalk, the neon shoe store they lean against, cupping the flames of passing strangers. The sky above Puerta del Sol turns a darker shade of blue. Who says it isn't become night's one eye as it scales the heavens, paling and shrinking before it moves across a June sky? And below, men persist and circle the plaza, twin fountains brimming over their brilliant waters. Hours from now, with the heat waning, the same moon will spot the figure of him making past Neptune, the Ritz, the orange jumpsuits hopping off trucks to sweep and spray, hosing down those electric streets. And I'm going to read it for you in Spanish, and this is the original version. Luna urbana, disco perfecto de luna, enorme y a fuego lento, rozando el horizonte sucio de la capital. Ay, qué luna más hermosa, dice ella, empujando el cochecito del niño por Atocha, y espléndidos también los muslos de los muchachos de Lisboa a una manzana, que trabajan en la cerca del kilómetro cero, la zapatería de neón donde se apoyan, escudando con la mano el fuego de extraños que pasean por allí. El cielo sobre la puerta del sol toma otro tono de azul. ¿Quién dice que no se convierte en el único ojo de la noche al escalar, palideciendo y menguando antes de cruzar el cielo de finales de junio? Y abajo, hombres persisten dando vueltas por la plaza, las fuentes gemelas rebosantes de aguas luminosas. De aquí a unas horas, con el calor desvaneciéndose, la misma luna verá su figura, pasando Neptuno, el Ritz, los manos de color naranja que saltan de los camiones al barrer y pulverizar, regando estas calles eléctricas. So I like this poem because, you know, I think of myself as a city girl, but I'm a city girl who's often enchanted by nature and many things natural. And I really like the interwoven aspects of the moon with all of those city sights and sound. You know, I imagine walking through a city marketplace when I read this poem. And it's just light, it's fun. And you know, Francisco Aragon, his poetry usually has a nice rhythm to it, which I like. So even if you don't, I'm hoping that even if you don't understand the language, you get a nice harmonious sound that you can enjoy as you listen to it. Thank you.
Maritza, can you handle the moderating? I need to take a business call.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to invite you guys to read a poem now. Next up, I have Alison and then Joe. So go right ahead, please, Alison. Oh, apologies. 1 second.
Oh, there it goes. Okay. All right. So this is it's a lyric, the lyrics to a song. It sounds so much better when she sings it, but it's called 17 by Sharon von Etten, who is this really amazing singer that I just love from New York. Okay, so I know what you want to say. I think that you're all the same, constantly being led astray. You think you know something you don't. Downtown hotspot, halfway to the street. I used to be free. I used to be 17. Follow the shadow around your corner. I used to be 17. Now you're just like me. Down beneath the ashes and the stone, sure of what I've lived and have known. I see you so uncomfortably alone. I wish I could show you how much you've grown. Downtown hotspot used to be on this street. I used to be 17. I used to be 17. Now that you're a hotshot hanging on my block, sun coming up, who's my shadow? I know what you're going to be. I know what you're going to be. You'll crumble it up just to see, afraid that you'll be just like me. Downtown hotspot halfway through this life. I used to feel free, or was it just a dream? Now you're a hotshot, think you're so carefree, but you're just 17. So much like me, you're just 17. You're just 17, 17. And really, like, I should play the music if you'd let me, but I don't know if I'm allowed to do that one. But the thing is, what I love about it is that I feel like it's a conversation between the adult version of themselves with the 17-year-old version of themselves. And just kind of like letting the younger version know that everything's going to turn out okay. And I really like, there's something that really resonates me because I left home at 17. And whenever I go and moved cross country, and whenever I go back home to LA, I always feel like my family sort of still sees me as frozen at the age I was that I left, which used to bother me, but now I kind of like it because I feel like they know all of me, all the different versions of me. And so many people here don't, they don't know the previous versions of me. So, and I don't know, I just really like the song a lot. And I think because I'm about to go back to LA soon, so it's like on my mind.
Who did you say that was by? I'm sorry.
Sharon von Etten. Yeah, and I have tickets to see her in August. I'm so excited.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Go ahead, Joe.
So mine is written by actually a friend of mine. It will be a garden again by Alison Lubar. Last year's tomato vines, hollow bones snap, a satisfactory breaking, cannibalized for compost. They barely shatter, each shaft bereft of marrow. Hollow the garden's heart in a cavern. Dried vines splinter like brittle ventricles. This is how I winnow you from memory. Our roots easily relinquish dirt, no fine fibers of life left to cling to this body of earth we built. Underground, unburied, it scatters all of us. In a new season's wind, warm enough for garter snakes, the neighbors tabby everywhere wandering. Finding temporary respite with permanent room for just me and the bees. I leave the untidy strawberries, wayward tendrils spilling out of chicken wire onto pebbled path. You wanted to uproot them to wild, split vines like ancestral veins. I let them grow to the lawn and over the walkway. I am both immersed conservator and distant witness. Lucky to that something unnamed and sweet survives. And the reason I just chose this is that actually I've been in a number of meetups that have been talking about regenerative systems in general. So, she had actually just shared this with me. I mean, she's published, but she shared this with me recently, and but we talked a little bit about having a regenerative system and what it would take to have to build more sustainable farms and things like that. So anyway.
I like that. Thank you, Joe. Did you say it was Alison Bonar?
Lubar.
Lubar.
L-U, yeah.
Lubar. Thank you.
Okay. There was just a mute for a second. Did you just want me to go, or?
I'm sorry?
Oh, okay, now I can hear.
No,
Yeah,
yes, Anton. No, you're up next. Go right ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. So I have a rap. It's called Buttree Smoothn. Yes, I purposely pronounced it Buttree Smoothn. So I wrote this to a beat, like normally when I write. Okay. Buttree Smoothn, I groove to. Could have sworn I will not describe the beat again. It hits a score, maybe win to sense it deep again. Diving in, immersed, suppose that I can swim, but that's a different song. So on this, it's more calm, more like bliss than the passion at the moment, a little bit ago. Unfortunately, these words have dimmed it to a glow. Back and forth, but I write meaning or only notes. I don't really mind both. In fact, it's kind of so. Just tossing notes from my mind like when the chat is gold. Is that my soul there? Well, whatever it is, it's well worth it. Just like a well provides, like a well inside. I tend to write feel good. It's things that are mostly feel good, even though I do also like to include anything from unfavorable to sometimes, things that I struggle with. So it's not one of my favorites. I just I just felt like including it. So yeah.
Well, thank you. Much appreciated. Okay, and next up, I do have Paul. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. I thought I'd return to Chelan Harkin tonight, and because she does a lot on being and becoming. This is from the book Let Us Dance. So 2 quick ones, okay? So they're pretty short. Okay. The first one's called Unteach Me. Unteach me to dance. I was born a natural. Unteach me vocal training. I came here ready to sing. Untrain me in the lessons of poetry. My DNA is written in verse. Especially undo me from those lessons of love. My soul arrived an expert. Get out of the way, pedagogy. Away with you, old knowledge. Begone, stale ideas. My soul needs space to whirl its inbuilt joy, to share its essential love, to return to God, the most natural dance. That's one. The next one is called Things Are About to Get Interesting. Things are about to get interesting. The more you open to the light of the wild sun, the more motivated she'll be to pour her golden drink upon you. You thought your life was crazy now? Just wait until you let love in. You think she'll bring you a sip of holy wine to your lips, but she'll pop the cork right off of this world and intoxicate all existence. Surround yourself with people who have already been brave enough to yank their souls from the straitjackets of their buds and let the blossom of their flag fly. You will need this encouragement because things are about to get interesting. What used to be your reverent postures will madly start trying to pull God into your body. All your grounded words will turn into the swooping birds of unpredictable poetry, and all your polite ways will become true maniacs for love. Are you sure you're ready to turn your respectable life into a wild parade? Perhaps consider this before you pray like that again. Thank you.
Paul, did those have special significance for you, or you're just enamored of all her work?
No, well, it's true. I kind of am enamored of all her work, but sometimes a night happens where Shrikant says a theme, and I think, oh my God, this is that theme in the most deeply mystical, spiritual sense, you know? So I'm happy that it came up and gave me a chance to read these particular ones. Although you're right, I have many favorites. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Next up, I have Marco. Hi, Marco.
Hi. This is a sorry. Can you come back to me? I lost my place in the I just have to find the poem again on my phone.
Not a problem at all. So next up, I have Brian Allenby. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, this one was written in response to a challenge, and the challenge arose out of a discussion about global warming and what will be the results of it. And it's called Nature Retakes the Earth. 10 years ago, the last human died. Some walls fell down, but no one cried. The buildings were covered from up till down. Nobody cared. There were no humans around. 20 years now passed, and the earth starts to heal. Concrete roads all crumble and peel. Buildings now falling, each one proof that humans have gone. 50 years on, the air is so pure. The oceans are healing, of that I am sure. Fish, I remember, from centuries ago, now swim through the oceans and rivers that flow. 80 years of healing and growth have erased most traces of who we did loathe. The creature that tried hard all the way to destroy the planet on which we all rely. 100 years have now passed since man breathed his last. Oceans, rivers, forests, and skies all clear, and never again will all creatures live forever in fear. That was it. But as I said, it was written in response to a challenge. And I offer no sort of excuses to that.
It's great. Thank you. You know, there's a series on Discovery Channel years and years ago about, it was called Life After People. That's what your poem brought to mind for me, how nature will win when we're not mucking with her.
Always.
Thank you for sharing, Brian. Thank you. Marco, I will call on you again. See if you are ready for us.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Welcome.
This is a poem that I came across over the weekend by Kurt Vonnegut. It's called Joe Heller. True story, word of honor. Joseph Heller, an important and funny writer, now dead, and I were at a party given by a billionaire on Shelter Island. I said, Joe, how does it make you feel to know that our host only yesterday may have made more money than your novel Catch-22 has earned in its entire history? And Joe said, I've got something he can never have. And I said, what on earth could that be, Joe? And Joe said, the knowledge that I've got enough. Not bad. Rest in peace. Yeah. I guess I like the poem. Yeah, just it's something that I've working on myself. You know, to be happy wherever I'm at with whatever I have and stuff like that.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. That was lovely. Okay, next up I have Steve Pollman. Go ahead, Steve.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone. In Santa Monica, there's a dance place called the Moose Lodge. And before COVID, it was a very popular hangout. It was mostly Santa Monica people, but people came from all over the LA area. And these are a couple of impressions that I wrote a couple of nights I was there. First one's called Blond and Blues. In the dawn of that gray winter, I lost all hope. Hearing a siren singing sweetly, the darkness, the deepness, her voice crashing on the rocks. And then I see her dancing in the sea foam on the sand. Aphrodite's blue eyes so enticing, following a yellow ocean scent. And when I touch you, I drown in your body, going down into the heartland of winter. This next one is called For SC. This woman in white moves like a black girl on the dance floor, arms akimbo, cutting, darting, punctuating. The drum beats in the love jungle, body heat, making me forget the dancer in blonde. No guide, no map, only her black coffee scent and the yearning for the soft animal nature of her body. And then the obstacles, the disastrous failure of the last hunt, the amnesia I can't forget, the betrayal of a friend, and the distance a man will go to save himself. Across these foreign borders on Ocean Park, I hope to find her. And there she is suddenly, in the blacklit light of the night.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. I invite anyone else, if you'd like, please go ahead and type in an exclamation mark in the chat to read out your favorite poem or a personal poem of your own. Okay, I'm seeing here, I have next up Mei Stone. Wait. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, Great, go right ahead.
Yeah, I unmuted myself. Okay, this is really short. I'm new. I just thought I'd try this out. I got a bit confounded because I found two entries for poetry readings on Monday evening. One the Toronto group of philosophy and the other one so I was kind of like cross-eyed for a while. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just going to read something really short. And as I think one of the speakers, I can't remember your name. This was also a response to something. So actually, I guess I'll tell you after I've read it. It's pretty short. I've got it on my phone. Without a title, I'm not a huge person who knows how to find titles very well. Maybe that's what we'll do. We'll follow each other into superficial oblivion, one half of us indignant, decrying what the other half wrote in good faith. Self-styled social media poet gurus, ministering to all the flock's needs, psychology's best attempt, cheaper than therapy. So, and that was in response to Rupi Lauer and a whole bunch of now what, I don't know if it's Generation X, it might be Generation X. They're now called Instagram, they're referred to as Instagram poets. And, you know, not having grown up when they did, I'm afraid that my sort of snobbish education or whatever has kind of caused me to feel that there's a lot of differences between poetry and poetry, you know, or let's say, you know, all poetry is not made equal. And to me, you know, there are poets and there are poets, and I, even while I need to sort of accept that they are still expressing themselves, and as is everybody who is nowadays, everybody is a poet nowadays. I still feel some kind of, you know, sort of, I have an emotional charge around these younger people who, you know, whose sort of poetry to me strikes me as kind of like meme-like and sort of like Twitter-like, and that's not really ever been what I felt poetry did. So I mean, I'm kind of working on it, my own prejudices. I suppose it might be like someone who liked classical art and then walks into the MoMA in New York and is suddenly horrified by a pile of bricks on the floor. So anyway, that was my response to the Instagram poets. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing and welcome. It's nice to see new faces and hear new voices. I'm always excited. So I am going, so you guys who have read already, you all poets, have inspired me to pull up a poem of my own, and it is also a response. So a couple of your poems read out loud have made me think, oh, let me find this one poem, because it was written in response. In my younger days, I spent every day pretty much dancing. I was always dancing, so I was almost always in clubs and Spanish clubs. But if you are a salsa dancer, no, you're not there to get drunk. You're not really there to meet up with people or anything. You're looking to dance and have fun. So towards the end of my clubbing days, there was just a vast decline in just the observed social norms in environments. So it used to be, in Spanish, there were very hard set unspoken rules of how one would comport oneself on a dance floor. And I found that to be deteriorating. So this poem is in response to my feeling that I was being, I didn't like the atmosphere on the dance floor. So I've titled this Just Want to Dance. All dressed up, looking like sin, oh so ready to begin. Nerves are vibrating in tune with the booming beat, feeling electrified by the sounds, the lights, the crowd. Arrived with friends, drinks are shared, being loud as we dared. In a group, we joined a crowd as we sway and move, caught up in the essence of the music that's played. You interrupt, single me out. Your question, you shout. Do I want to leave my friends and go dance with you? Something about you prompts me to accept your offer. Two people weaving as one, bodies in sync, forming a link, an insubstantial connection that lasts the length of one song. Let go and just enjoy the glorious breathlessness of dance. But you go too far, invade my space, hands in the wrong place, too much a stranger to assume such exclusivity, ruining any joy that had been spinning from the music's hum. Dancing is a release, it's thrilling, sets senses spilling. Abandoning any stiffness, just twist and bend gracefully. Alone or with another, it's a beautiful moving art. Outlet for soul sets you on fire, but my body's not for hire. Sorry if my joy in embracing this beautiful thrumming tune led you somehow to think I wanted you to cross that line. Don't know you, about you I don't care. Can't believe you dare. Intimate actions more appropriate for a bedroom, making mockery of the tempo in the beat pounding the room. Didn't dress up for you, I'm glorifying me, being as I want to be. Just wanting to get lost in music's embrace, not willing to feel deflated because you can't understand. I'll spell it out. Just here to dance. You don't have a chance. And now the song is done. The beat has changed. I get lost in the crowd and forget even your name. So thank you. That was my response to what I had earlier described. Thank you guys. So it's always weird to read. It's so much different. I will say, I read the featured poems for you all the time. It's such a different feeling when I read my own poem. I will ask you guys if you would like to recite any of your poetry still, or another poem that's calling your name. Please go ahead and type an exclamation mark in the chat. If not, we will go into the breakout rooms. Oops, wait, I'm seeing that May, you're posting just to me, but I see your exclamation, so go right ahead. The floor is yours.
Okay, I just on my phone, I just wanted to share one more thing. It's very short, so I don't want to hold up the flow, so to speak. Probably everybody here's tried their hand at haiku. I had some sort of ambitions a long time ago to just go through the alphabet and try every single poetic form, because that seemed to be the obvious, an easy structure to follow. I didn't actually manage a sonnet. No, I didn't manage an Alexandrine. I didn't manage a villanelle. But I did manage haikus because they're very short, and poetry, fortunately, offers a very condensed way of expressing a lot in a very sort of brief sort of space. So this is a haiku. And when I was writing poetry in the past, I recognized the addition of a visual image to strengthen the overall power and impact of what you're trying to express. So I found a picture. I took a picture of myself and I laid in the sun, and the haiku is like this. so you can count the syllables with me. Early sun, leafy shadows soften my face. So thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you. Okay, guys. So next up, what we're going to do is we're going to split out into 2 breakout rooms. The focus and theme for today is being and becoming. What we do is we do have a moderator in each room. And what we'll ask is we're going to be creating a collaborative poem. So what you'll do is everyone will call out a line from the poem. So the breakout rooms will last 20 to 25 minutes. And we ask, we can do, Alison, you think 25 is better? A little bit more time? Because we're kind of good on time right now. So we'll do 25 minutes. For the first 20 minutes, you'll be calling out lines, each of you. And we do ask you guys to all participate. It's really quite a lovely experience. And then the last spot where we're going to try now is the last 5 minutes of the breakout room. You'll stop adding lines and you'll look at the lines that you have and read them out loud to each other. Maybe the moderator will read it out loud and you guys can rearrange them, maybe massage them with those last 5 minutes so that you can feel more confident in having a cohesive, collaborative poem. At the end of the 25 minutes, you'll come back to the main room here with us and we'll read out both of the collaborative poems. And then we will open the floor to everyone to talk about their experience in creating the collaborative poem, or just general comments on the poetry read today, how it made them feel. So that's what we like to do when we come back. And we'll also ask you if you found that in doing the collaborative poem, you may have identified some thoughts on the theme of being and becoming that were maybe not necessarily in your consciousness before you entered into today's breakout session. So I guess I have to create the breakout rooms. Sorry, Shrikant, we may have gone just a little long. I may have forgotten to close the rooms. Was having too much fun.
That's all right. So it gives more time to do editing of poetry, so which is always good. All right. So Alison, do you want to go first or do you want to go second?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah,
Excuse me, I just have a quick question.
Yes.
To Shrikant?
Yes.
Hello. Are you the Toronto Philosophy Group or are you the 52 living things?
Yes.
Which one are you?
We are 52 living things, and Toronto group publicizes our meetups. Alison, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. This is called Salty. Can I step in the same river twice? Moments from now, it's not the same river. Moments from now, it's not the same I. Both have changed over time. They are not what they once were. Wait, sorry, I can't read that now. Yet they're the same because it's still a river and I am still I. Is the river water? Is the river the banks of the water? Am I myself, how I see myself? Or am I how others see myself? Becoming to becoming involves both learning and unlearning. The river is a compilation of things. Aggregate can be aggravating. Grit to an oyster is a pearl. If I step gingerly into my inner tube and float down the Delaware and row the raft down the Mississippi, is the river the same downstream? Am I the same at the end of the journey? Who changes, the river or I? Am I who I was or who I become, or who I am become? I am a baby, an inquisitive child, an angst-filled teenager, the hopeful adult, and whatever this is. Am I all of my former selves or none of them? At the end, you're salty when you started fresh.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Alison. Next up is Maritza.
So we also titled ours this time. Usually we don't. So this is the 82nd verse. There is nothing higher than non-doing, and in so doing, I become undone. I started reaching past the point of despair, but not less than being. The math of moving forward is not teachable, pushing up to the right side of the equal sign, bending, stretching, falling into a chasm of truth. I was surprised to think that sitting under a tree is not nothing. Black holes of same and different. Enough. Without action, I can only sit. When I sit, the ground shifts. The yogic plant sitter is redeemed. Caretaker of being. Stand straight. Nothingness takes courage. Eternal motion as a seed, propelled from a cocoon into a new reality, transformed into light. No dying here. It's all been said. I will become whether I act or not. Every poet I know had a body once, tender and ripe.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Maritza. All right, folks, so what was the experience doing the poetry here this time, the collaborative poetry? Go ahead and type exclamation mark if you'd like to comment. Maritza, go ahead.
Shrikant, I will say we had a new person in our group, and I got the pleasure of watching her face when we first read the lines before we had massaged them or changed them. And it sounded like a poem. And my statement to her was, that's my feeling. That's been my feeling every 16 weeks that we've been coming here together. I saw it, and it was just such a beautiful thing. So thank you for that. And it was just great, like to see that moment when you realize these are not separate lines. Holy crap, it's a poem. It was quite awesome.
Wonderful. Alison, what was it like?
I think I definitely like this approach better, because the thing is, sometimes if you're just taking turns, you feel like you're frozen. You know what I mean? Like, it's better to just throw them out as they come to you. And then I liked having the time at the end, just to kind of edit it and play around with it. And sometimes we moved lines around, and
Sure.
kind of felt like a more natural way of writing. Yeah.
How about this? I think the editing process is a crucial process, because it is the one that brings things together. So how about we expand the breakout rooms to 30 minutes, first 20 minutes to put things down, last 10 minutes to do editing, or if you want 15-15. So what do you guys, firstly, I'm going to ask this to Alison and Maritza, but then please feel free to chime in, everybody. What do you think about leaving 10 to 15 minutes for editing, and talk about whether you would like 10 minutes for editing or 15 minutes for editing? Alison.
I think I like 10 minutes for editing, because I feel like, especially because these themes are really philosophical, so there's always time where we're talking about the philosophy of it, and then we're writing. But then the thing with poetry is that poetry is it's about the language, and so you need time to make sure that it's, because I find that sometimes we're not having the things that you would have in there. You're not having figurative language. You're not having repetition. You're not having alliteration. You're not doing all these things. And so it would give time to really add that in and take the ideas that we've written and just kind of play with them and just make them, because poetry is supposed to sing in a way and dance and not be just like, it's not supposed to read like a philosophy book. So I feel like if you have that time, you could kind of play around with it and get it to there.
It dance. Folks, we have done enough of these that we can now talk about the process of it. So that's what we're doing now. So let's talk about the process. So, and especially people who have been doing this for some time would love your feedback on this. So one comment I have is, following up on what Alison said about letting people just add lines is better than taking turns. Because it's kind of like, it's the principle of improv. You have a group of people who are there, and anybody who thinks that they have something to say can add. And what that does is that at that point, there is a point of inspiration, that something is triggered in their mind. And you want people to be able to put things down at that point. It is far more powerful than saying, okay, now it's my turn. What am I going to say? And what has happened is that you had a thought before and it's gone and it's been overwhelmed by something else. So that's what I would recommend. Again, comment on all of these things that we're now talking about, the process of kind of structuring this process so that all the goodness, everything that we like, we want to make it standard. Everything we don't like, we want to avoid in the process itself. So we'll go with Maritza and then Joe. Maritza.
So I agree with Alison. I think 10 minutes for editing is more than enough, because you also don't want to give too much time for people to second guess things that they think are good, like second guess too much. I will say, I in general don't tend to encourage a philosophical debate prior to calling out lines. But I did in the beginning, but now I feel like I'd rather the philosophical thoughts come out as lines. So pretty much if you open your mouth, I'm writing down what you're saying, and people who've been working with me are starting to get used to it. So they tend to be careful about what they say, because it may end up in the poem. But then we can massage it later as it goes. But I think it's worked fairly well. And it's kind of shocking, the things that come out of us, like, you know, just in different things. Even when you think something's light, it's deep. Like we have, you know, one of the lines in our poem, you know, the person who provided it was very hesitant. They're like, I don't know if this is going to mesh. You guys can throw it out. And it ended up being like the line that all of us felt made the poem. So it's, you know, you never know how it's going to work. So I will say that I don't usually encourage folks to just chat about the topic, because we'll come back to the room and we'll talk about the theme and the poem. So usually I'm just like, right down to business, start giving me lines, and then but you know, I do so nicely. Another thing I've learned is that
can I go ahead and comment on that? I love this. So, you know, speak, but speak only poetry. I like that.
Yes. I can't.
And what we'll do is that we will.
Yeah, that's kind of the kind of moderator I am.
Right. No, I like that very much, because there in that space, what you're doing is that you're doing collaborative poetry. So what happens is we'll do division of labor. We will do all the prose in this session after the breakout rooms. When we come back, we can talk about all the prose that you want to talk about. You can say, look, you know, I had this idea, I thought about it this way. There are multiple ways of approaching this. This is the time to do it, because if you do it during that, it actually stops other people from expressing, you know, their heartfelt, you know, feelings and their poetic thoughts. So I like the idea of kind of separating out poetry in the breakout rooms, prose afterwards.
Right. Because we come back together and we invite folks to go into more depth. So usually, you know, in the breakout rooms, I'm a little bit of a more taskmaster. Give me lines. I will say also that I found that gentle nudging is very effective. We have some shy people, so if they don't want to call out their line, I invite them to just put it in chat and I'll pick it up. I do warn them at the beginning, if they don't give me a line, I will ask them if they would like to. You know, they're welcome to say no, but you know, I found that you keep asking and then people will give you a line, and it's working. So I don't do the call on people in an order thing. I let folks kind of yell out a line as they wish. I haven't found that anyone hogs it. I don't think anyone feels, because what I'll do is I will know who hasn't, because they're small groups. If there's someone who has not yet called out a line, I will ask them, hey, I know you have a gem for me. And they usually do. Mm-hmm. So no, it's a very enjoyable process. I absolutely just love this. This is the highlight of my day, guys. On Monday, I get excited. You guys are even more exciting than like whatever torture exercise I do before this.
Wonderful, wonderful. So folks would love to hear from you. So it's going to be Joe followed by DLJ. Joe, what do you think? What about the structure here?
Well, since we changed this particular process and we weren't going line by line, that it did, you know, it did go a little bit more smoothly. You start to have a little bit more of a vision. We actually did have a bit of a philosophical discussion in the beginning. That actually was kind of fundamental to the poem itself. DLJ, you know, gave us his perspective on the Heraclean stepping in the same river. So twice that it is most certainly possible. But in any case, but that was the basis for our poem as well. And so that was helpful in that particular instance. Yeah, no, I think that's an extra 10. I am for an extra 10 minutes at the end for editing. I mean, that's my personal belief, is that because you can do a lot with an extra 10 minutes. I mean, you're maybe not going to time it just right. So you can use the time to continue writing during that period as well. And that, we still had some people that maybe didn't participate as much, but that's just sometimes when people are new, they're just getting used to things as well. So no, but overall, I thought that this was actually a much more productive approach than we had taken in the past, where we were going line by line.
Line by line, what do you mean by
line by line? Each individual, comes up with a line.
Got it.
And so that,
person by person, okay.
Person by person, yeah.
Okay,
it did seem like a much more efficient process.
Excellent. So let's, I think Alison and Maritza, is everybody agreed that we should make that the standard procedure? Yeah, okay, very good. Next up is going to be DLJ, followed by Paul. DLJ.
Yeah, sorry about that. I wasn't expecting my 3 o'clock in the morning rant about why Heraclitus was wrong to turn into something which was rather good by the end of it. So thanks to everybody else. Okay, so mine's, I think the very first session when that whole poetry thing kicked off, I laid out what I do as my process for poetry, whereas I had a poetry partner for a long time and I don't actually liaise with them anymore because I've got them in my head already. So there's a Harold in my head who edits as I'm writing, right? So it's kind of evolved in that way. But so I won't go all over that again because I did it before. Instead, I have a question for, let's see who the question was for, which is, my chat has just jumped. The question is for Paul, Mike, Mei, Steve, and Marco. I don't know what your title means. Am I being thick here? 82nd verse?
I'll give a short answer and we'll come. It's basically 81 verses of Tao Te Ching, and they're trying to write the 82nd one. It is not about the 82nd airborne. It is.
That crossed my mind for a second, and then I saw all the Buddhist yogic stuff in there. I was thinking, I wonder whether anyway. So yes, nice one.
Thank you. Thank you, DLJ. Next up is going to be Paul, followed by Mike. Paul.
Yeah. As far as process, I think the hosts are able to judge the best process. So I defer to that. And I like the way Maritza, I mean, if the problem with not going line by line is there might be a very silent group, but then you solve that by introducing this idea of calling on people. So that's all I'll say about that. So as far as what makes this work, I just think it's I've been thinking about that more tonight than ever after our real fun session we just had in our little group. But Mei pointed out that our poem kind of read in a way that an ancient Chinese poem in translation might read, where there's some cryptic things in there that you're kind of put your mind into a confusional state in a little way, but not huge. But my point is, when one person writes a poem, they have a style, they have some sort of logic in their head. So it's kind of hard as one person to inject that sort of joyful noise, almost like randomness, but yet it's not completely random. So it might be why, one of the reasons this works, and the other thing being, people are writing from all different backgrounds in our little group, some with no poetry experience, some with a lot. And so someone who considers themselves a certain kind of poet wouldn't dare put in a simple line with no alliteration, no figurative language. And yet here we have people who dare to do such a thing. And it's like a refreshing, So those are some just thoughts on how fun and why it's so fun and cool to do this.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. So I'll make 3 comments. So firstly, moderators always have the privilege of stopping all the rules and kind of, just getting rid of whatever rules they think are harming them. But the way we are trying to do is that we're trying to learn from the lessons from the past so that future moderators who may not be as experienced as Maritza and Alison can start off with rules which are worked for us. And they are always, moderators are always have the privilege of overriding them. So it's a way of kind of using the wisdom of the past and then having the freedom to innovate on the top. Second, I think it's very interesting. So for the first point, I wanted to address DLJ's point. So I'm hoping that over time, just like DLJ has Harold sitting in your head, we will end up having many, many people sitting in our heads, suggesting this and that over time. So hopefully, we'll get there. Last one is that it's very interesting how some point, which is really apt, really shapes things. Like the moment you say 82nd, the entire Tao now is going to sit in your head and is going to whisper to you, go this way, go this way, go this way, to everybody. So it's really powerful. Thank you. Next up is going to be Mike, followed by Steve. Mike.
Yeah, I like the idea of having the extended time to review the poem, because we had Mei, for example, looked at the poem at first and then thought it should be broken down into stanzas. And when she suggested that we did it, it changed the poem. And then we even had Paul read it after Maritza. So we had 2 people reading the same poem at one point. That changed the poem. And I'm sorry I got bumped from the computer. I didn't get to hear either group reading there, but it's just amazing. I just repeated week after week that after the collaboration, how much the human voice changes completely, in my opinion, the words that I see written. So I really enjoyed that, especially the extra time after writing the lines.
Wonderful. I think the idea of having the extra time, it does 2 things. One is that it emphasizes the place of this collaborative work in the meetup itself. So it's like moment you move it from 20 minutes to 30 minutes, it becomes more significant. And by segmenting it, 20 minutes plus 10 minutes, I think it takes it to a new level. It has a structure. So it's kind of like a 2-part. One is kind of letting your creative juices flow and then bringing them all together so that they flow together. So first, just everybody expressing themselves, and then second, doing that. So wonderful. Next up is Steve.
Yes, I was very proud of the group. The creative process is always very easy, but when you have to edit, and I think this is the first time I've been in a group where we actually edited for 10 minutes. Most of the time it was a minute or 2, and then we had to go back into the group. So I was fearful that it was going to be a train wreck, that people were going to start yelling and screaming, and you got to put this line over here, that line over there, and oh no, that sounds terrible. So I was very proud of the group, the collegial respect for each other, and the way we got along with each other in a very peaceful, constructive way is a lesson for the world to take our example.
Wonderful, Steve. So I think we need to say more about that. I would invite Maritza and Alison also to say more about this, because this is really the heart of what we are trying to do, which is unusual. On one hand, we respect individuals and their ability to create and want to give full expressive capacity to each individual. Second, we want to, so it's one is kind of individual expression, respect for individual expression. And then actually listening to the other person. Okay, so one is speaking, being free to speak. And then secondly, also listening very carefully, because if you listen very carefully, people are very different from you, everybody is very different. And if you actually hear carefully, you hear things and you say, oh, that's interesting. I have not thought about that. And then kind of coming up with a way where these things meld together, the listening process and the speaking process. And generally what happens is that, especially in the editing area, as you correctly pointed out, people are okay saying, okay, this is just my expression, this is your expression. But when they go into the editing process, many times people have almost become very dogmatic. I say, no, it has to be like this. But to be able to actually watch the editing process, do the same thing with the editing action as you're doing with the creative action, that is really special. And I think it's it's basically the community that we have built and the respect we have for each other, which is the foundation of it. It's just that we do this namaste, right? I mean, the God in me greets the God in you. That's like the idea of saying that each individual has something within them and you can learn something from them. Thank you, Steve. Great comments. Next up is Mel, followed by Alison. Mel.
It's Mei.
Mei, go ahead. Mei, you need to unmute yourself. Okay, she's not, go ahead. Okay, I don't think. All right.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I've had a slight cat distraction here. I just wanted, is my volume okay?
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. I kind of wanted to echo the observations from the other collaborative poets in my breakout group. I think that what you're doing, Shrikant, is in principle a really excellent idea. I think that everybody should be forced to do collaborative work, no matter what particular discipline they happen to be in, whether or not it's bricklaying or bus driving. I think that each sort of activity, it should be whatever group of activity that is, everybody should be forced to work together, because there certainly is too much divisiveness in the world in general, and I think that what you're saying, even though I'm essentially paraphrasing you, is that we are so we are so in our own little private mental universes, our little bubbles, and so to collaborate suddenly certainly sort of shakes us up, and sort of it's like, oh wait a minute, I'm being called upon to come out of my bubble. And then of course, if you're I mean, a lot of poets are very sensitive people, if then the next thing that happens is, anxiety. It's like, oh my God, now I've got to somehow let my bubble be a part of a bigger bubble, and I don't know if I can do that, or I don't know how to do that. But I'm very grateful to all of the people in my particular breakout group, Maritza, your great moderation as well, that you were all very sort of gracious, and everybody was very patient with one another. And even though, part of me is thinking, oh my God, I'm just, I'm really glad that the poem that got birthed worked out as well as it did, because one can imagine that everybody just concentrating on the single baby, and too many cliches about too many cooks spoil the broth. But I think that with understanding, as you said, for one another, that it actually did, and obviously it has in the past worked out as a formula, a very very good positive formula for your group. So that's basically just what I wanted to say about the experience of collaboration. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mel. That was it is absolutely true, and I agree with you and Steve that world needs more of this. So I'll say a few things. So first, it was very interesting, your phrase, everybody should be forced to collaborate. It's actually true and false. Okay, so I want to just talk a little bit about that. It's very interesting. So what it is that there is something sacred inside each of us, and that is very precious. And everybody who is a poet, everybody who is kind of talking from their heart wants to keep it that way, that sacredness. Okay, but that sacredness is there in all of us, that other person. And when you have an interaction, it has to be certain kind of interaction which actually respects that sacredness in each of us. Then you have both. You have individual expression, which is fully authentic, not being afraid or anxious of what other people are going to say or do. It is genuine expression, which actually creates value. And at the same time, the interaction, see, the thing that both people have to hold this idea, that group has to hold the idea. That is what has happened in our group, that everybody actually has this common idea that yes, what is in individuals is very important, and that is true not only for me, but for these other people. And not only that the other people know it, but they know. So it's not only other people know this, but you know that they know this, and you have that confidence in them, so you feel confident. So what ends up happening is that actually you do not have to force anybody. What ends up happening is that even people who have been burned by being open and then regretting it, kind of feel that this is an environment where they can actually express themselves and be liked and honored for it, even when they're saying something which some people might disagree with. They will appreciate a genuine, authentic expression. And when that happens, even people who are shy end up slowly opening up over time. I have seen this happen over time. People who are initially very quiet start speaking more and more because they realize that there is really nothing to be afraid of. So it is just beautiful. Thank you very much, and wonderful to have you here. Next up is going to be Alison, Maritza, and Mike. Alison.
Yeah, I was thinking that in some ways this is a lot like, well, not like we're going to compare ourselves to them, but like Paris in the 20s, and the thing is, when you have a bunch of really talented people all together, they start bouncing ideas off of each other, and then they get better at it. And so it's interesting that in different parts of the world at different times, you had the writers in Paris in the 20s, you had the dancers in New York during like the 80s, you had, all these different places, because their ideas are feeding off of each other. So they're each doing their own individual work, but they get better because they're learning from one another. But also what you were saying about, when you feel like you're in a safe place to create, that it comes out more. So I actually, it's kind of strange because I teach poetry writing. I mean, I teach 4th grade now, but I used to teach 8th grade honors English, and my school had a writing major, and I was the writing teacher for the majors. And I'm certified through it all the way through 12th grade. But I stopped writing my own poetry completely in college because I had a class where we were reading our poetry, and I wrote some poetry that everybody hated, and they ripped it to shreds and were so incredibly cruel about it that I literally just stopped and didn't write again until the poem that I read a few weeks ago. Like, not one poem in all that time, but I guess I felt safe enough to bring that out,
Wow.
But that's what you need. You need like a safe place to feel like, you can do it. And to feel like, because failure is part of the whole act of getting better at anything, and it's part of the creative process. So you have to just be willing to fail and go, all right, I'm going to fail. All right, I'm just going to fail. Oh, well, and then I think also, like, I had to sit there and go, like, so what if it's not good? Most art isn't good. Very few people are like phenomenally talented. Most of us aren't, but so what? And sometimes I think when you're writing something, like, I always said that dance was my public art and writing was my private art, that everything I wrote was just for me. And it was just for me to like work through ideas and thoughts and things I was going through. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everything has to be shown to the world. Sometimes it can just be that I just put it aside, and then, like, as you become these different versions of yourself, you go back and reflect on who you were at an earlier age. And there's value in that, I think.
Wonderful. I want to build on 2 points that you make. You're talking about, this time in Paris in 1920s. You're talking about 1980s in New York. There have been other times. There have been times. Florence, there was a time. And what happens is that there is turn of the century, there was Belle Epoque, and these are very real, because the phenomena of critical mass is very real, of things, people, ideas bouncing off each other amongst creative people actually produce something which is of a scale which is much larger. It's orders of magnitude, like 10 times, 50 times, 100 times larger than what you would find otherwise. Another very simple part of it is just the sheer quantity. If you feel free to actually do a lot of poetry and do it so that you're getting feedback, just the sheer quantity of it makes you better and better and better. You're learning from yourself. If you say that I'm just going to write a few poems, like 5 poems per year, what you can achieve is different if you're going to write 5 poems collaboratively per day, because all of that work that you're doing actually it's not about the poem really. It is about poetic expression. You're really learning the art of expression, and it can be learned only by doing it in massive quantity. So thank you very much. Next up is Maritza.
So two big points I want to make. The very first is I want to say that, what we're all talking about here is exactly this, being and becoming. That's what we're all doing here when we gather on Mondays. Another is, I've had the pleasure of getting a few regulars in that breakout room, and I have, there are some who, week one, they're like, I know like negative amounts of poetry. I bought a book that said poems on the outside cover, and I'm going to open this to page 1 and go through it until I get to page 500. And I'm going to learn about some poetry. And that approach was obvious in their collaborative moments. But I have had the pleasure of watching those same types blossom and allow themselves the freedom to let their mind wander and to pluck things out of it that maybe weren't by rote or something a little bit more creative. So it's been, you know, this, I have been, or we, all of us have been, you know, we have had the viewing pleasure of watching many others becoming here together, and it's quite fascinating to see. And there are some who I don't think yet Shrikant have realized it even. I am noticing it, that, you know, the lines they're throwing out at me, they're a little bit different. They're not so rigid. I'm not getting, you know, the beginnings of an essay sentence. And so it's nice to see that. It's quite lovely to have them evolving right in front of our very eyes. So I've, you know, I really have enjoyed that. This was the first time in this session that we actually had enough time at the end. So I have, you know, I've been kind of going rogue and I've been sending, you know, I have been forcing the 5 minutes at the end for a few weeks now, or several weeks. But it almost felt like, you know, I'm stealing the time, right? So it was just a little bit less and it felt a little more rushed. Today, we kind of were like, we're legal now. This was in the schedule. So it just was like, and there was this joy in the switch today that was really like almost palpable. Like everybody, you know, we had all these lines and everybody's like, yes, let's check it out. So it was nice to see that as well. And you know, there were occasional lines as we're editing that were the philosophical statements, like, oh, this reads very much like the Tao. And so, you know, we had this, you know, it was brief, and then, you know, we went back to editing, but, you know, watching people learn about themselves as they view their lines intermingled with others is really special. And I don't even know, I mean, you know, you mentioned that, you know, it's the individual collaboration and then it's the community collaboration. And I feel like I'm seeing this little bit of, you know, what I absolutely love, and my belief that you make a strong individual and then these strong individuals make a strong community. I view that here in our breakout sessions. I view that bit by bit, each individual line maker is getting stronger. And then that means as we all get together and we, you know, make sure we have the cohesiveness that we want, it's stronger and stronger. You know, Steve has left here, but I wanted to comment just for a second on, he spoke of the respect that everyone had. And it really is like everyone wants to have a voice, but everyone is cognizant that this is a creative process. So I find that nobody, you know, Alison said, I think even those of us who don't tend to be as creative as others, we're all aware that any type of creativity has an emotional component. So you don't want to kind of step on and smush somebody's creative thought. So I find that everyone moves forward with that concept. And I think that it really does allow for something beautiful. Thanks.
Wonderful. I want to pick up on this point that you made about being and becoming as related to this. You know, both of us like Louis Sullivan. So the function here is the art of expression, is yours producing the art. Your action of producing art is the function. The poem is a form. The way in which most people approach poems is that they are saying the poem is here. I will just look at it and look at it from afar, get affected by it. It's not mine. And they look at all art like that, and a lot of the world like that. They look at ideas like that. When you take on the mantle of actually creating art and try your best, it doesn't matter what level you are, but in the process of doing that, you develop an appreciation of poem, of that art form, of a kind that is actually not accessible to people who are just passively looking at forms, because you're saying forms are here. That is privacy of being, of saying that's all it is, and it is separated from the becoming part. When you are actually going through the process of creating this poetry, you appreciate Shakespeare better, because you can see what is involved, how it feels when you actually create something like that. And so it is a way of, this collaborative section is a way of moving to the becoming part of art, rather than just the being of art products produced by other processes, by other people. Thank you. Next up is going to be Mike, Anton, and Alison. Mike.
I was talking to Joe the other day about this phenomenon of the 52 living ideas. If you're second or third in the queue, so you naturally have a thought that you want to contribute to the group, yet now there's two people that have gone before you. And I have absolutely no idea what it was that I was going to say when I chimed in. I don't know if this has happened to anybody else here, but I do have something to contribute based. I was listening carefully to Shrikant about expression, and then when Alison went through, putting herself out there and then getting this negative feedback. And that happens a lot in comedy and improv and music, if you're improvising musically. And I remember the movie Good Will Hunting, when Robin Williams' character says to Matt Damon's character about marriage, he goes, we get to pick and choose who we let into our weird little worlds. But that really is where the good stuff is, right? If you're at a party with someone, you're having a conversation, and you bring something up about something that you're into, it's not always easy to do that, because it might, whatever it is that you're into might feel a little bit outside the norm. But that really is where the good stuff is, because when somebody connects, it's also similar to Maritza's poem. She's talking about dancing with someone that you meet at a club. That's someone you haven't met before at all. And that person takes the chance to ask you to dance. And when it does work out, I think the payoff is really worth the risk. So to show our shadow selves, or to show those multiple voices that at least I know I have in my head, but I think looking at all of you and getting to know you, that all of us have those voices that are outside the norm. You have to take that initial chance to expose it a little bit and be willing to see somebody else's kind of outer voice. And when it meshes, that's kind of what happened to us tonight in the breakout room. I think people just pulled back and just let it out. And it was one of those nights where it collided in a really good way. It was a very, very cool night.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. It's really, really fascinating. I mean, the thing is that what ends up happening, just like in improv, it's the yes and. Because what happens is that yes and, you can keep building on it. Like if people have the attitude is, look, you're working together, then that yes and, it does a couple of things. A new person adding their yes and does add something new. And then when you go to another person, exactly, they have the same feeling, just like you were talking about in 52 Living Ideas, that two people have spoken before me. And that keeps happening in poetry itself, in improv itself. And it's a wonderful feeling, because it's like if you're focused on yes, and yes, I had this point, and now this person has added this, so I have this and that. So wonderful, thank you. Next up is Anton. Anton.
Yeah, I do relate to what Mike is saying, or just like, as far as two people go ahead of you, you were mentioning that too, Shrikant, and then it's like, okay, what was I going to say? I mean, my mind is always like bustling with ideas anyway. So it's like, okay, which one of these 8 will I choose? And this is a group where people definitely throw in a lot there. So it's engaging to me, or engaging or interesting, or, something I think about. I have respect for people who are willing to, Mike has mentioned stand-up and a stand-up improv. Like, wow, that's the grit that requires to deal with, to well, be able to see beyond the failure, because the failure could be brutal in that context. And, not that it's easy in any context. Like I choose, for example, when I've done a couple of verses here, or even when I read someone else's poem, there's a certain amount of, this was said earlier, of it can be vulnerability, or just like, I don't quite know how this is going to, that's the way I feel. For people who show up and you're like completely confident, power to you. But, I, like others, like feel like I don't necessarily know how this is going to go. And even when the first time I shared a verse of mine that I wrote, and it went way more smoothly than I thought it was going to, so that felt great. That part is, for me, that part is the hard part before the collaborative poem. It's like the collaborative poem is a relief for me, because it's like I just shared something that's more personal, more or less. It's not always like a big deal, but more or less personal to me. And so it's not to say that the collaborative poems are easy, but it's different. Other people, it's a different process of thinking, and one that I feel more open to than I share verses that I feel reasonably comfortable sharing. And that may or may not be stepping out of my comfort zone enough, or people that I feel reasonably comfortable sharing them with. There could be something to be said about forcing yourself, but I do like find where is not necessarily something completely comfortable. That's fine. That's easy, but something, moderately uncomfortable for me to share, for me to do. And that helps me. So those are some thoughts that I have. Yeah.
Wonderful, Anton. I mean, this is really very deep, because it is very hard to share something that you have produced, far more harder than doing the collaborative, because you have so much invested of yourself in that. In some ways, even when you're sharing a poem you love, that is true. You're saying this is what, and this relates to Mike's point about you doing that whenever you are interacting in a deep way. You are exposing your values. You're saying, this, I think, is amazing. And you are saying that to a person whom you're not sure holds the same views, same values, right? So that is an act of courage. It's an act of courage, and it's an act of saying that, I think this is actually good. Okay, from the bottom of my heart, I think this is good, and this deserves to be in the world. It is a statement of that. And when you do that, actually there are people who will say yes, and you would have actually done something for them, which is very precious, because most people focus on the negative part, right? Of say, oh, this person said this bad thing about it. But now think of the upside, not just for you, but for the other people. Many times you give expression to something that people have felt very deeply, or felt at the edge of their consciousness. They don't quite have words for it, and they say, yes, that's exactly what I think. That's huge. But you can get that only if you take the risk and you have the courage to speak out your values. to make them external. Most people think that their values are too precious, so they want to keep them internally. They want to hold on to them. But things like Belle Epoque that Alison was talking about is made possible by those who have the courage to express themselves, find people who actually value it, and work with them to actually make those values real on a scale far greater, like 100 times greater than what they could be, just for you and for others. So, so thank you, Anton. Really appreciate it. Next up is Alison.
Yes, and now, now I went into 20 different directions from where I was going to go. But okay, so I was thinking that one of the things I really love about this is all the time before Mondays when I'm reading all this poetry to read. And it's funny because I'll find so many poems that I like, but I'm like, I'm not sure that I want to reveal that about myself. Or what will they think if I read this one or that one? Or and I'm like, I'll have 20 poems that I love, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going with this one, But the other thing about the fear that I have of poetry is kind of interesting, of writing it. So when I was a teenager, I mean, I wrote tons of poetry and I rode horses a lot. And I was on a horse one day and another horse bit the butt of my horse. So my horse was like in a John Wayne movie, like, Mei. And I hung on, did not fall off somehow. But I remember when I got off the horse, the instructor said, you have to get on immediately or you'll never ride a horse again. It has to be right now. And I couldn't do it. So it took like 10 years. I finally got on a horse. And then I got the crazy horse. The crazy horse like went running up the mountains and someone had to chase the horse. And they told me I could have died if I'd fallen off. And so then that was it. Until like 3 years ago, I went to Argentina and I was like, I have to do this. I have to ride this horse. So I rode a horse. So now I've ridden horses again and I've written poetry again. And I feel good. I've conquered, But it's sometimes I'm like that. If something goes wrong, I just shut down and I'm like, I'm done. That's enough. But that's not really the good way to live. You have to, take chances on life or you're not really living. So.
Yeah, I used to be like that before I started doing the meetups, but I found that, life is too short to not focus on your values. If you really care about something,
yeah,
because it magnifies itself. You will find people who actually value that, who are at a level sometimes much higher than you, on the same dimension that you think is precious. They actually have that in massive quantities, and you would never know. You would never know about it if you did not, take the chance. So I think that the negatives. I also understand that, people are different. Like, for example, for me, failure doesn't affect me that much. Like I'm fine with it. I'm fine kind of trying things, falling on my face, no problem. Doesn't, it doesn't really bother me. So I'm fine trying things that I don't know. And taking risks. It's just how I am. And I know that it's not so for many people. And I was not like that when I was growing up. I was kind of much more cautious and much more introverted than I am now. But I just found out that it's just, life is too short. Why would you wait? Why would you waste? Because I think that it's a question of feedback loops. What happens is that when you actually express yourself fully and find people who have the same values, you actually build feedback loops, which are very powerful. And the feedback loops are of both kinds. There are the positive and the negative. The best of my friends will give me great negative feedback. Because what happens is that many times, whatever positive things you have is mixed up with negative things that you have. And you would never know. You have it as a whole in your head and you can't separate it out. There's somebody else who actually cares about you and has that commonality of values. You can say, well, you're doing all of this great, but why are you doing that? Or you can just see them do something else and say, wait a minute, they don't do this. Why do I always do that? So it's a great opportunity of using these feedback loops, external feedback loops to learn. All right. So this is fantastic. And firstly, I'm just tremendously grateful to Maritza and Alison, who actually do most of the work here, because it's the breakout rooms, and Maritza, chooses the poetry to start with. And so it's just amazing group of people that we have. And I think we are onto something. And I think this is growing. Well, Maritza, what do you think?
Yes, I'm quite the fan. I think that it's great, and it's a learning. Every time he spent here, more so it's becoming than any of my other discussion groups. I'm taking something new. I'm learning of myself. I'm learning of others, and just the joy, just the absolute pleasure that I get being here. It's kind of unsurpassed by anything else I'm occupying my time with online. It's great. I like the, there's 2 lines from each poem. Is the river water, or is the river the banks of the water? And then caretaker of being, stand straight, nothingness takes courage. I feel like those lines pulled out from our long poems are great monikers for this process we're doing together.
Wonderful. So on that note, thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate you being here. Good night.
Good night.